Oh, you want to build a custom keyboard? Well, where do you even start? There's keycaps, there's switches, there's keyboards, there's everything, and they're all out of stock, and I don't know. Howdy hey. Hipyo Tech here to save the day. It doesn't matter if you have 500 bucks or 50 bucks. You can build a custom keyboard and I'm gonna show you how. But if you have 500, it's a little bit easier. In this video, I'm gonna walk you from start to finish, how to pick out a keyboard, pick out switches, lube switches, and whatever this is. Okay. Yeah. Now, if you're watching this video, you probably have no idea where to start, or maybe you have a keyboard and just want to learn some new things. Now, I can help both of you, so stick around. We've got some useful knowledge. Warning, this video contains opinion. Ugh. So this video story begins with 50 Landing, one of my favorite artists. I felt like building him a keyboard because he plays games. I reached out, he was down, and I'm gonna take the beginner's perspective on this one. Now, when you're picking out a keyboard, there's a couple things that are pretty important. The first thing is budget. Lay out how much money you're willing to spend, and then maybe extend that just a little bit. Next, you need to figure out what layout you need. Layout dictates what keys are going to be on your keyboard. Contrary to what some people would have you believe, layout is entirely preference, and you're going to have to decide this one for yourself, Chief. Sorry. Oh, just kidding, it's 75% I win. If you go to 60% and 65%, you get more desk space, but you sacrifice F keys, and on 60%, arrow keys. 75% is considered a sweet spot for some, as it keeps the F keys and the arrow keys, but it looks a bit odd to some. Now I can already stop typing it. You're typing about the number pad, probably all four of you. There are options for that as well. Now, when looking for keyboards, you might hear about gasket mounts and tray mounts, and you're like, why are these people obsessed with mounting things? Put very simply, a mount is kind of how your keyboard fits together. It can change how your keyboard feels and performs, and it can differ from board to board. Gasket mount generally means the typing experience will be softer. Tray mount generally means it'll be stiffer, but there's a big spectrum there, and yeah. Now, I've got a video I'll put in the top right as far as my top 5 in-stock keyboard recommendations. But generally, keyboards run a lot of things in group buys, meaning you can't buy them, or if you can, you have to wait quite a long time, which is really unfortunate for somebody getting into the hobby. Just know, if you see GB or group buy, that's like a Kickstarter. It means you're gonna get it a lot later. But if you're incredibly impatient, there are options out there for you. There's even pre-built keyboards that aren't half bad, like this iQnix. Now, I can hear you getting bored. Kind of rude, by the way. But my final word of advice for buying a keyboard is make sure that it says it's hot swap. For beginners, I don't recommend soldering. It's fun, but it limits your ability to experiment without higher effort levels. So in my opinion, get hot swap. There you go. If you're already feeling incredibly confused, don't worry. You can also check out this video where my friend tried to build a keyboard entirely by herself.
Oh, I goofed it up real bad, you guys. Why are you making me do this by myself? Ah!
All right, everybody, let's take a deep breath together. And let's have a conversation that your parents don't want to have about lube. Switch lube. Now, there's a lot of different types of switches. There's clicky, tactile, and linear. Clicky makes a click noise, tactile makes a small bump, and linear is smooth all the way down. Unfortunately, there's really no way to figure out which one you like the best, except of course trying them. In my experience, most people are generally comfortable with a linear switch, but it's totally preference. Also, keep in mind when shopping for switches, a switch can sound different in a bunch of different keyboards, and the keyboard sound is not just the switch. So if you looked up a Soundtest for something and it sounded good, it might sound completely different in your keyboard. If you want a list of switches, then check out Keybs for All in the description. Use code Hipyo to save 5%. For the build I'm making in this video, I'll be using Gateron Milky Yellows, which are one of my personal favorite linears. These have been lubed and filmed, and you're probably wondering what's lubing? We'll get into that pretty soon. You'll also notice when shopping for switches that it mentions a spring weight, and this is how easy it is to press the switch. The higher number means more force to press. Now let's talk about lubing switches and why people do it. Here's a really good example. So that's the same keyboard, same switches. The only variable that changed is I lubed the second one. Now enthusiasts lube keyboard switches so that we can make them smoother, more consistent, various reasons, but in general it's for sound. Now some switches come factory lubed, which for some people is good enough, but it really depends on the switch, as some factory lubing can be incredibly inconsistent and not as good as hand. But if you don't want to lube, make sure your switch is factory lubed at least. Now let's get into lubing, and if you already know what's going on here, I recommend you keep watching as you might learn some new things. Or at the very least, exhale out of your nose because I made a funny joke. Anyways, to lube your switches, you first need a switch opener, and I'll leave all of this stuff down in the description. Then just press down with the switch on the opener and pop all of them open. Now you're probably thinking, Hipyo, this is an incredibly sus bag. What is going on here? Well, I put 15 drops of super lube oil or Krytox oil in a bag, and then I put all my springs in there. This is because I'm very lazy. But because I'm a hard worker, I then proceed to shake the bag for 30 seconds and then massage for 30 seconds. You know, you gotta give them a good massage, otherwise they will not perform well. And then you pour them out. For this next part, you need a brush and some lube. And of course, I'm using Keeps for All stuff here. They're an affiliate of mine, but like any brand work. Next, I also recommend some tweezers, as they will save your life, and a stem holder, which is kind of optional. I just have fat fingers. And then maybe a backup brush. To lube the switches themselves, you want a very light layer on your brush. Like, you shouldn't really be able to see the lube on there. At least that's kind of how I like it. And then basically you do 3 strokes on each slider, like 1, 2, 3. Flip the brush and then 3 strokes on the other slider, and then go around the world. Wait, I thought we were gonna cut this part. No, cut this part. Cut. Okay. With a light layer of lube, we can then put our spring in our switch. And I'm using a lube station here, but you really don't need one. It literally just holds your switch in place, like, and try not to lose the spring. Next, take the stem, either in your fingers or on a stem holder. Get a light layer of lube again, and then go over the stem with a light layer across the highest contact points first. My technique here is not very good because I was looking through a viewfinder, but you know, I tried my best. Now, if you're lubing tactile switches, you probably don't want to lube the legs, but I recommend trying it out, as lubing the legs reduces the tactility. Some people like that, and in fact, I like that a lot to reduce the tactility, but you know, preference. Next, we're just gonna put the stem with the legs facing the little metal part, and then pop the switch back together and test it. I can't stress this enough, test your switches when you're lubing them to make sure that you're performing how you want to be performing. Maybe you over-lubed it, maybe under-lubed it, who knows? Also, I haven't forgotten our core objective. I did lube all those Gateron Milky Yellows, but my camera filming was terrible. Now, I need you guys to bear with me for this part. If you get through the stabilizer section, you get an extra howdy hey. Why are stabilizers important? Well, just listen to this. That's what happens when you don't lube them, and this is what happens when you do. Okay, do you understand now? Stabilizers are these little guys that keep your keys stable. Now, there's screw-in stabilizers and plate mount stabilizers, and different boards support different types. Generally, I recommend Durock screw-ins and Durock plate mounts. Screw-ins are generally superior in that they're easier to get tuned. However, if you're dumb, then they're hard to install. Plate mounts can also sound just as good, but require a little bit of modding. Sometimes you'll see Band-Aid mods on them, like this, and yeah, they're easier to install. Here's a bonus tip. If your stabilizers are pre-installed and you're lazy, then you can use a hobby syringe and some dielectric grease and just shoot it in there. This won't be perfect, but it'll make them better than if you didn't. But here's what I recommend. If you have a lot of patience, you can try the Holy mod. Feel free to look it up, but I don't. Generally what I do is I take a brush, I get some Krytox 205 G0 on it, which is a lube, and I generously coat the inside of the stabilizer housings. Now, if your stabilizers are particularly bad, you can coat the stems as well, but if you're using Durock V2s, you kind of don't need to coat the stems, it's kind of excessive. But the ones I'm lubing here are pretty bad, so I'm going with the more is more method. It's literally that more lube is more good. Now, there's full videos out there on like exactly how to lube your stabilizers, but this kind of gets the general vibe across. There's a lot of different methods and everybody likes to do it differently, but essentially all that matters is that your stabilizer doesn't tick. Now for this, if you have a lot of money, you can use Krytox 205 G0 on the wires, but oh, look at this shot, oh my gosh. Is this a professional YouTube channel? Is this guy a professional? I use Permatex dielectric grease for my wires most of the time. It gets the job done. You do a hardy coating, and then, oh, we're gonna need to blur this one. And then you insert the lubed wire into the housing and make sure you hear a click. When reassembling stabilizers, make sure the stem, the 2-hole side, faces where the wire goes in when you put the stem into the housing. Then you just grease up the other side, pop them together, and repeat like 4 to 5 times. If you bought a stabilizer pack that comes with a long wire, that's for a 7U spacebar, and check to see if the board you bought supports that or not. Howdy hey, howdy hey. Anyways, back to the build. And 50 Landing decided that he wanted a TKL, so I picked the Idabao ID87 Crystal. I've got a video on that in the top right, but let's install the switches. Yeah, it's not that easy, but provided you listen to my input and bought a board that's hot swap, it will actually be decently easy. With the hot swap PCB, you can try a bunch of different switches and figure out the one you like the best. Then you'll be the happiest, I guess. Here's an important note. You need to be incredibly gentle when installing the switches, and I recommend installing them with the PCB out of the case so you can support the socket from the back. Make sure the pins on the switch are straight before you put it in. So if you've been following along at home, that means you have a keyboard, you have stabilizers, you have loop switches, they're installed. You're doing pretty good. Granted, I can't tell you how to actually build each keyboard that you have at home, but you know what? Yeah. This isn't even scratching the surface with mods. Like, you could put pillow foam in your keyboard and tape to improve the sound, and there's limitless possibilities that are so fun with the hobby, oh my gosh. But that's once you get addicted, you know, just keep watching. So with the keyboard mostly assembled, it looks nothing like a keyboard because we're missing one crucial element here. Can you guess what it is? No, it wasn't. No. Frankly, I'm disappointed in you. It's keycaps, guys. Keycaps. It's an important part of every build and every balanced breakfast. Please don't eat plastic. It would take me a whole 15-minute video to discuss keycaps and everything I feel about them, and maybe that's coming soon, and maybe I'm gonna include a diss track in it. Hit subscribe for a diss track, let's go. But I have done a video on keycap sets that are in stock that you can buy from various lower budgets to high budgets. You can check that out as well. As I mentioned before, group buys ruin everything in this hobby, but there are more keycap sets coming in stock, like Drop's Keycap program and Kinetic Labs has a bunch of stuff in stock. This is hugely oversimplified, but essentially PBT is going to sound deeper, ABS is going to sound sharper, clackier. But as you'll see with this build, I'm using PBT keycaps and it sounds clacky. So there is no one size fits all. Everything is subjective. That sounded like a Betty switch and click type of shout silent whisper. When we were looking to build 50 Landings keyboard, we found these Matsuri keycaps on drop.com and we kind of had to have them. They are only $86, however Drop sent them to me for free, and they ship right away, so that's pretty cool. A lot of keycap sets have what are called novelties as well. Those are just fancy keys that look pretty. Oh yeah, did I mention a lot of keyboards have RGB and epic RGB gamer time? That's pretty cool, right? But just a side tangent, not enough enthusiast keyboards have good RGB, and that makes me really sad. I think we need to change that. We need to get on that. Now, I might have totally 100% missed something. This was a relatively fast-paced video, just to try and get you through the general vibe of building a keyboard. If you're interested, check out some of my other videos, get subscribed, and follow me on Twitter to tell me what I forgot. I'm gonna post 50 Landings reaction to getting this keyboard on Twitter or Instagram, one of the two. Also, howdy hey to everyone that hit that join button down below and supports me and all my videos that I make. If this video helped you, consider hitting it. Here's a sound test of the board. Bye!